Over the last decade, dozens of MMORPGs have launched with massive hype. Every few years, there's a new game claiming to be the next big MMO. But almost every time, the same thing happens. Players leave, servers empty, and the game slowly dies. Some MMOs lose 80 to 90% of their players in just months. So the question is, why do modern MMORPGs keep failing? And more importantly, can any new MMO actually break the curse? MMORPGs used to dominate gaming. Games like World of Warcraft built massive communities that lasted decades. Players formed guilds, explored huge worlds, and spent thousands of hours building characters. But today, launching a successful MMO is incredibly difficult. These games take years of development, massive budgets, and huge teams. Yet, even after all that, many of them fell. One of the biggest recent examples is New World. When it launched in 2021, it was one of the biggest MMO releases in years. At its peak, the game had over 900,000 players online at the same time. For a moment, it looked like the next major MMORPG success. But that success didn't last. Within months, the player base dropped dramatically. So, what went wrong? For many players, the biggest issue was lack of endgame content. Players rushed to max level and quickly realized there wasn't enough to keep them engaged. On top of that, the game struggled with many bugs and exploits. All of this combined caused many players to lose interest. Another issue modern MMORPGs face is player expectations. Take classic WoW. When Blizzard brought it back, millions of players returned to experience the game again. But for many fans, nostalgia wasn't enough. Players began asking for something called Classic Plus. The idea was simple. Take the original game design, but add new content, new raids, new zones, and new systems. But instead, players mostly received the same expansions again. For some fans, this felt like a missed opportunity, and it showed just how difficult it is to satisfy the modern MMO audience. Some studios take a different approach. Instead of trying something new, they try to copy what worked before. A recent example is Terraceland, released as a replacement to World of Warcraft in China after the breakdown in negotiations between Blizzard and NetEase, leaving Chinese players without access to the game. Now, many players quickly noticed how similar it looked to World of Warcraft. The story, the art direction, and even the gameplay systems. But one of the biggest criticisms of the game was its time-gated progression. Players could only progress certain activities at specific times. Instead of letting players grind and progress freely, the game limited how much you could do each day. For many MMO players, that's a huge turnoff. MMOs are supposed to reward time and effort, not limit how much you're allowed to play. Several MMORPGs launched with promising ideas but struggled to survive. Games like Bless Unleash, Elion, and Crowfall all faced similar problems. Some suffered from poor performance. Others struggled with weak endgame systems. And some simply failed to maintain a long-term player base. This pattern has become so common that many players now expect new MMORPGs to fail. Another major issue in modern MMORPGs is monetization. Running an MMO is expensive. Servers, developers, constant updates, all that costs money. But the way some games try to make that money can drive players away. Many MMORPGs have been criticized for pay-to-win mechanics, selling power boosts, progression advantages, or items that give paying players an edge. For many players, this completely breaks the experience. Most MMO players are perfectly fine with cosmetic monetization. Things like mount skins, armor appearances, and character customization. When monetization stays cosmetic, players don't mind supporting the game. But when it starts affecting gameplay, trust disappears very quickly. Sometimes the biggest problems can happen behind the scenes. One of the most controversial MMOs, Ashes of Creation. In recent years, the game was one of the most anticipated MMORPGs in development. It raised millions through its crowdfunding and built a huge community waiting for its release. The game promised massive open worlds, player-driven systems, and dynamic cities that players could build and control. But things took a dramatic turn when the game launched into Steam Early Access. Shortly after, reports began emerging about major issues within the studio. The CEO, Steven Sharif, leaving, and the entire studio getting laid off, and some quitting. An internal conflict started surfacing, and the future of the project became uncertain. Because the early access launch happened shortly before all of this, some players began accusing the situation of being a cash grab. However, the full story behind what happened remains unclear. What does it show is how risky MMO development can be. These games take years to build, and if anything goes wrong financially or internally, the entire project can collapse. When you look at all these examples, a pattern starts to appear. Modern MMORPGs struggle with three major problems. First, content. MMO players consume content extremely fast. What takes developers months to build, players can finish in days. Second, monetization. If players feel the game is pay to win, they quickly lose trust. And third, expectations. The MMO community has extremely high standards. Many players have spent years in games like World of Warcraft, and convincing them to start over somewhere new is incredibly difficult. Despite all these failures, studios are still trying to build the next big MMO. Some upcoming games are experimenting with different ideas and systems. One of those is called Scars of Honor, a free-to-play MMO where developers claim the game will avoid pay-to-win mechanics and focus on long-term systems like factions, exploration, PvP, character progression, and procedural dungeons. Whether it succeeds or not remains to be seen, because history has shown that launching a successful MMO is one of the hardest things in gaming. So, maybe the real question isn't just why MMORPGs fail. Maybe it's what would it actually take to make a new MMO succeed. Would it be better monetization, more content, or have player expectations simply become impossible to satisfy? Let me know what you think in the comments, because if there's any genre that can still make a comeback, it might just be MMORPGs. And with that being said, I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.